right. Well, good morning to everyone. I am Kristen Miller, President and CEO of the Santa Barbara South Coast Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us this morning. You know, we've had such a good flow of information back and forth with our members through this year-long pandemic. And each time something big comes up, our members have let us know. We heard loud and clear recently that the challenges with hiring have become the biggest barrier to reopening our businesses and therefore recovering our local economy. While there's been a bit in the news about restaurants and hospitality, what we've found through our focus groups with members is that the labor shortage is affecting every single industry from Goleta to Carpinteria. The more we talked with our members, the more we realized we may not have much control or solution to this problem, but we do have some things to offer, like data from an expert, feedback from our industry leaders, and sometimes just the comfort and camaraderie of hearing from each other that we are all experiencing the same problem. Therefore, we are gathered today to address this situation with the current labor shortage in hopes that we may find some overlooked solution, or at the very least, share some best practices of what we have each found along the way. Lastly, if we can help map out a timeline of when we think things will get better, it may help us all weather the storm over the next few months. I want to thank in advance Josh Williams. He's provided valuable and timely information to our chamber for many years. Josh is going to speak first with us this morning today about the latest employment and unemployment numbers for our region and give us some insights into the unique times we're living in. I'm going to introduce Josh, and then after his presentation, we'll have a short update from 5, I think it is, industry leaders, and then that should leave time for a roundtable discussion. So thank you all for being here, and take it away, Josh.
Thank you, Kristen. Really enjoy being here. Had the kind of the fortunate blessing of being able to kind of look at the Santa Barbara and Central Coast economy for many years now. So I will say I'm going to try to go over a lot of data relatively quickly. There are 2 really valuable reports that have a lot more detail. So Santa Barbara Workforce Development Board and Santa Barbara Foundation commissioned a report that really looks at kind of the COVID impacts on Santa Barbara County economy and kind of our expectations for kind of looking at recovery. And then Reach just put out a Central Coast report that looks at kind of Santa Barbara and SLO. So Central Coast for today and for the research is really those 2 counties. With that, I'm going to jump into the data. And then if you have questions, I think we're saving the questions for later, but Kristen, if you want, I'm always happy to answer. I was like I always enjoy kind of talking about the data.
I'll tell people, raise your hand. I'll try to watch the raise hand thing if you really want a question answered during the presentation. Otherwise, we'll do it at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I want to talk about kind of how has the pandemic really impacted the Central Coast. And remember, when I say Central Coast, I'm talking about Santa Barbara County and SLO County. Who has been impacted most by the pandemic? What does rebuilding and recovering look like? And I think really it's important to know we're just starting to come out of this. What are the questions we are still asking? We have a good sense of what the impacts are. As researchers, we have some interesting questions, but we don't know what the recovery is going to look like. So I think starting to think about the different directions it could go is an important part of what I want to talk about this morning. So let's talk about some of the impacts. I mean, as you can see, we are starting to see some recovery in terms of business revenues, and this is good. And this is an important part of it. You can see how the Central Coast was definitely a little more impacted than the state overall. But I think one of the important things to remember, industries were impacted very differently. There were some industries, just like there were some households, that saw little no impact and actually have grown through the last 14, 15 months, while other impact industries and other households have been impacted significantly. And so what we're looking at here is you're looking at the different industry clusters that make up the Central Coast, and these are higher earning industry clusters. And to be honest, the horizontal axis is the loss of jobs. And this is loss of jobs between February of 2020, kind of right before the pandemic really impacted us, and February of 2021. So just as we were just starting to see some positive economic impacts, but really before any of those recovery really happened. And just so for clarity, ICT stands for Information Communication Technologies. FIRE is finance, insurance, and real estate. It's not the fire specialist, finance, insurance, real estate. Public services and infrastructure, where actually firemen would be. Biotechnology and biomedical devices, and DATAM is defense, aerospace, transportation, manufacturing. So our higher earning industry clusters, these are all industries that have an average annual earnings of above 90,000. The pandemic was a recession, right? And not even a really bad recession. They lost between 2 to 4%, 5%. DATAM lost a little more, but we're actually seeing DATAM is starting to recover already. But you can see at the higher end of your spectrum, it's a recession. In our middle earning industry clusters, a little more variation. You can saw education and knowledge creation was impacted pretty significantly, and that not only impacts the jobs in there, had a real impact in terms of people's labor force participation and availability. Whether we're talking about childcare, whether we're talking about some of the online educational challenges, that reduction in the education and knowledge creation industry cluster has secondary and even tertiary impacts. Healthcare actually saw a considerable decline, and everybody's like, how is that possible? And we're in a pandemic. Well, the reality is a lot of the, that were considered non kind of essential healthcare services saw a significant decline. And hospitals went up. A lot of the clinics and things like that saw reduced employment. Building and design is already seeing some recovery, but it was impacted pretty significantly through the 12-month pandemic period. And then our lowest earning industry clusters saw kind of a tale of really two worlds: tourism and hospitality and recreation, which is a really important and sizable employer. I mean, it was an earthquake. They lost over 50% of their jobs. And they're already coming back, and they're coming back quickly, but there's a lot of disruption. And I'm sure as you talk to kind of hospitality employers, when you lose employers or lose employees, they don't come back like that. And finding those employees and getting them back to work has been a real challenge. Retail and other services includes like salons, dry cleaning, a lot of the kind of the personal services. Those have really been shooken up as well. And I mean, they lost 1 in every 5 jobs. And retail, it's interesting. You look at retail, some retail areas have really seen increase, but a lot of small niche ones have declined as well. And then of course, agriculture is an area that was really seen some increase. And that's consistent with what we're seeing kind of across the state and across the country. You're already seeing one of the areas where we are seeing a real increase is that leisure and hospitality industry is already picking up lots of demand for new jobs, and they're looking for people online. Not surprising, but they're going to be challenged. I mean, you can't lay off employees and then expect them all to come back, and that's been the real challenge. And finding those leisure and hospitality is seeing an increase actually in domestic visitors. The business travel and the international travel that hasn't and probably won't recover for the next 6 to 12 months, but the domestic is really going to come back strong. I imagine by the end of June, you will be busier than you were 2 years ago. All our indicators that it's going to be there's a lot of pent up demand for leisure and tourism. The real challenge is going to be finding enough people to kind of service all the positions. One of the bright spots and one of the things that I think we really need to think about is you're going to see a lot of churn. And we've already seen small businesses be really impacted by this, but we're also seeing renewed entrepreneurialism, both in terms of the number of venture capital and venture capitals, but also just business births in general. And this is an area where there was activity in 2020 in the Central Coast. And when we expect there to be that really to kind of, be a very important area of emphasis is new businesses, entrepreneurialism, and increase in venture capital spending. Again, we job quality. Job quality is always an issue. Just real quickly, tier 1 jobs are your higher paying professional positions. Tier 2 are your middle wage positions, and tier 3 are your lower paying positions. Tier 1 average earnings at the Central Coast about $90,000 annually. Tier 2 is about $50,000. And tier 3 is about 25 to 30,000. So that gives you a sense kind of what, job quality looks like. This is before the pandemic. We can see that most of the jobs that have been lost over the last 12 months, over 2/3 of those have been in tier 3. And while the good news of that is the multiplier effect is small, the bad news is the households that can least afford to really sustain and kind of handle long unemployment, are doing so. And what kind of impact that's had on them will be challenging. Let's look a little bit at households, and we can see that, as we go into that, we can look at, for our highest quartile earners, they're actually above employment levels where you were in January. Where your lowest quartile earners, so people with higher incomes, their demand has actually increased, and increased, pretty significantly. Whereas the lowest quartile have declined considerably. We're going to see that change over the next few months, but again, there's still a lot of disruption. So how quickly it happens will be something we want to track. Labor force participation has been a real challenge, and it's something that could potentially hinder the speed of the recovery in the Central Coast, whether it's due to childcare, whether it's due to transportation issues and changing kind of work kind of patterns. But you do see a pretty significant, pretty significant decline in labor force participation. One of the things that the Santa Barbara Foundation did is they funded a survey that we were able to do that represented kind of households in Santa Barbara County. And we can see that the impact of childcare was significant. Almost half of adults that are working had to at least alter their work schedule because of changing childcare needs. Whether the kids were 1 to 2 all the way up to 12 years old, we saw some significant challenges in terms of trying to make sure kids were able to handle that, whether it was online education or whether it's childcare in the morning. There were some pretty significant impacts. And the duration of those impacts weren't short. They were typically 6 months to a year, or they're still happening today. So this wasn't just a 1 month thing or even a 3 month thing. It was largely at least 6 months, if not more. The other real challenge that you see, and again, this is a real bifurcation between the haves and the have-nots, your lowest income households, almost a quarter of those do not have access to the internet. And while we thought, access to the internet at home was, important kind of before the pandemic, obviously with education, with so much, work, you can't go and knock on a workplace now and ask for a job. Everything's largely moved online. So this importance of bandwidth, I think, is particularly key, particularly if you're trying to connect with next generation of workers who a quarter of them in the lowest households don't really have access, between a quarter and a fifth don't have access at home to the internet. So what are some of the kind of things we're looking at? I will say one of our concerns are there is kind of an apprehension about kind of expectations for the future. And this gets back to that survey of Santa Barbara County adult residents. A lot think that the job opportunities for children really in the next generation are going to be worse. About 2 in 5 adults think that job opportunities in Santa Barbara County are going to get worse for their children. They think things will be okay for the next 3 to 5 years, but there's some pessimism moving forward. And I think, to be honest, looking historically, that's not surprising. Whenever you have kind of a large macroeconomic kind of disturbance and downturn, there tends to be some pessimism. But I think some of this is connected to fears about automation, fears about the significant change in kind of what jobs will look like over the next 10 to 20 years. Some of the key challenges facing the Central Coast has been the uneven impacts of the pandemic. While certain, industries have been, and households have had little to no impact, others have seen considerable impacts. Whenever you look at the Central Coast, the high cost and low supply of housing and childcare, those two issues particularly continue to hinder the ability to kind of attract qualified workers and really kind of impact the speed of recovery. And I think the other thing that we need to be thinking about is Santa Barbara is the land of small businesses, and small businesses make up a large portion of our businesses, more so than the state average, more so than the national average, and they are the ones that have been hit the hardest. And they're the ones, we also have a lot of tourism and hospitality and recreation in Santa Barbara, and those are also the industry that hit the hardest. So this is an area that does have resources and has smart, educated people, but it also is one that's been impacted by the pandemic, and I don't think we should try to minimize that. Some of the potential solutions that we have been talking about is, how do we continue to grow and support the Central Coast, and Santa Barbara County and South Santa Barbara County entrepreneurs, and how do we expand those small businesses that have recovered and are looking to recover? Really infrastructure and opportunities for developing remote work and satellite offices. One of the real opportunities I think Santa Barbara has is you're going to see a change in where big businesses locate their businesses, particularly with the catalyst towards a lot of online work. And quality of life will be an important kind of determinant where businesses want to be, because they want people that are smart and live where they want to live. And I will say quality of life is one of Santa Barbara's strengths. Yeah, and I think this is also an opportunity to maybe convert unused or surplus office space, particularly as it changes and evolves into residential space. I don't think I need to talk to this group about the importance of housing and the need for housing. And then there's, opportunities to look at and identify some industry-specific strategies for some of those industries like defense, aerospace, transportation, manufacturing, ICT, biotechnology, biomedical, to support really innovation and economic development. I'm running out of my 15 minutes, so I'm starting to talk faster. I'll try to slow down, but I do want to leave you with some of the things that I think, as researchers, I can give you really, I think, good data on what the impacts of the pandemic will be. But I think we don't know how the recovery is going to happen. But I will tell you, these are the questions that we're asking. The office, remote work, where will we work and live, and how will demand for office space and where, that relationship, kind of transportation, commuting, all that, how will that change from the pandemic? We know a portion of people have been working, much more, remotely. How much of that will be hardened and kind of change the relationship between commute patterns and where, headquarters and things of that nature? How are in-demand skills and pathways changing? One of the things we've seen is, there's a real increase in demand for, cybersecurity, for, artificial work, for creating, being able just to manage Zoom meetings and things of that nature. So there will be a change in kind of demands and skills that employers are looking for, and understanding how that really connects to our different industry clusters will be valuable. Tracking how industries and technologies are changing, and what are the industries and entrepreneurship and expansion opportunities in Central Coast. We have some ideas how particularly tourism, agricultural technology, aviation, some of the work at Vandenberg, how that could potentially generate new work. I will tell you, economists and researchers like me, we do have a good idea of what's going to decline. We miss terribly on what's going to grow. We have some ideas about it, but it's something that we need to be vigilant, be tracking on a kind of quarterly, 6-month basis, because it'll go quickly. And then lastly, I think the evolution of tourism is going to be important. How will demand for visitor services and experience and the quality of life in Central Coast, all those things, and a world where business travel, international travel will decline, but domestic travel, not just within California, but in the US, will likely increase. And what does that mean, for South Santa Barbara moving forward? So I think I'm close to right on 15 minutes, Kristen. I hope so.
You really are, and I'm amazed. You do talk fast.
Sorry.
I didn't want you to cut off because this is such good information. But yes, your timing is perfect. And if there's anything else you'd like to wrap up, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say there is a lot of important things that we want to be looking at, but we do have a good sense of what the impacts of the pandemic did. And I think if you want more detail on that, the report that was just put out by the Santa Barbara Workforce Development Board, and then REACH that just put out that covers San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara County, will give you a lot more detail on career pathways and kind of how the world of work has been impacted. And really the question becomes, how are these different some of these questions, how are they going to change kind of economic development, economic opportunity, and economic mobility really in South Santa Barbara. So there we go.
I'm looking for hands raised, but I'll ask a couple of follow-up questions if I may.
Please.
I think this is great information. And as you've summarized that, sort of what we know and what we don't know, in some of those questions that you listed there at the end of what, potential solutions, have you been contracted to start to look at some of those things, or is this an opportunity that we as the business community need to look at? Like where is any of this information going to come from, do you think?
Yeah, so we have been contracted in certain regions to start looking at it. The challenge with these questions is they're all very kind of regionally specific. So what's relevant for San Diego or San Francisco is going to be very different than Santa Barbara. I think one of the advantages that Santa Barbara has is it's very desirable as a quality of life. The challenge has always been is that it's hard to grow a business to get, once you get to a certain size, it's hard to grow beyond a certain area. So the question becomes, with a lot of the newer emerging industries, is that still the case for Santa Barbara? And can you attract at least some satellite offices and some of these, other opportunities? And how will it change kind of demand for office space, and how will it change demand for kind of workforce and like that? So, we are starting to track metrics. I'll be honest, the next 6 to 12 months, we're going to be very busy looking at kind of metrics and indicators that'll help us answer some of these questions nationally. But the real meat of it is what's going on, not only even within your county. Santa Barbara is such a weird, I didn't say weird, it's a very interesting, diverse county in that the South is so much different than the North, which is actually even a little different than the central area. And so, even within the county, there's going to be differences and there's going to be variations in terms of these impacts. I'll be honest, that's one of the reasons I really enjoy studying Santa Barbara, because it's really a tale of kind of, in some ways, it covers all of the diversity that California and the nation has as well.
It's okay. You can call us weird.
Yes, I was going to say, right when I said that, I'm like, that's not a good.
No, it's okay. We sort of know. And that relates to my follow-up question, which is, particularly for the chamber, in pre-pandemic, we would have listed access to a qualified workforce as in our top 3 barriers to business growth for decades, with the other 2 being access to housing for that workforce and overregulation. So we've been surmising during the pandemic that our numbers are a little worse and our challenge is a little higher because we were already faced with this challenge, and it's amplified here. Is that true? And can you speak to any more about our weirdness there?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the weirdness could actually turn into be a strength, in the sense that people always want to live in Santa Barbara. And I think the question is going to become, particularly in certain industries, particularly in some of your higher skilled, higher paying industries, we're already seeing that the remote workforce is happening there and employers are embracing it. They recognize that if my employers are happy, they can still do, 70 to 80, 90% of their work from home. Now, the challenge is going to be, they still need to be able to get out of Santa Barbara to meet meetings. So there's been evolution of, I don't know if you're tracking kind of some of the air taxis and some of the, there is some technologies that could make Santa Barbara more attractive for some larger employers and satellite offices here. So I think that'll be interesting to watch, particularly for your higher paying industry clusters. The challenge, though, the workforce access and the workforce housing, and even I would say childcare too, particularly given what I'm seeing in terms of challenges, those are all going to be issues, particularly as you want to maintain the quality of life because tourism and hospitality not only helps bring in visitor dollars, it also makes part of the reason why you want to live in your area. The great restaurants, the opportunities to do a staycation at a really nice hotel, down, maybe a 15-minute, 20-minute drive away. So I think there's some interdependencies that you need to be aware of. And so, yeah, workforce will still be important. But I think the other part of it too is there's an infrastructure need too. You need to make sure that online bandwidth is something that you have strong enough for the top end for businesses that are going to need 5G and all of the different capabilities, but also at your lower end. So, people have access across the spectrum, regardless of their income, their household income. So, and then I think the innovation and the entrepreneurship is going to be particularly important because you're going to see a lot of churn. Every community across California, across the country is going to see a lot of churn in terms of kind of their small business profile.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much for that, Josh. I appreciate it. And I appreciate if you can, I think you're staying on with us, right? To hear the rest of the discussion and
absolutely. And yes, I'll be muting too. So,
okay.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, everyone.
All right. We're going to head into the section of our program where we get to hear from some industry leaders across different sectors. Please join me in welcoming one of our large employers in the hospitality and restaurant industry, Sherry Villanueva from Acme Hospitality. Sherry.
Hello, and thank you for including me. It's interesting listening to Josh's quick summary. I mean, he pretty much, summed it up, I think, perfectly as, what the data is showing is exactly what we're feeling, as the boots on the ground. In the 10 years I've been in the hospitality business, never seen a labor crisis like the one that we're dealing with today. We have every position currently open and recruiting for across every one of our businesses, both in the restaurant side as well as the hotel side, and have really been struggling with finding not only qualified candidates, but even candidates at all, and have really been, and every one of my colleagues, in the restaurant and hotel industry has been feeling the same way. I think, we've had significant departure from the industry. A lot of our particularly higher skilled management layered people leaving the hospitality industry overall. I think the trauma, if you will, of the last 16 months that we experienced was very, very intense for a lot of people, and has sort of led them to other industries in tech and some of the industries that have had a little bit more stability through this last crisis. We've been through many crises in Santa Barbara County, the pandemic being the largest, obviously, and most recent one, but certainly we've not been immune to the instability that comes with crisis around natural disasters and crisis now around sort of this public health crisis and resulting economic impact. So, all the reasons Josh talked about, I think we would agree with. There's the childcare issue is very real and very challenging for many of our employees. We still are having a lot of employees who are fearful to return to work in positions where they're public facing and working and meeting with a lot of different people on a daily basis. We have several people who are, really just sitting out, waiting, very comfortable in unemployment. They've been comfortable there for the last 16 months, and they're just waiting it out. And until it's not as comfortable there, there's not a large incentive for them to return, particularly to hospitality jobs that are very hard work, very long hours, very grueling. And it's been a challenge for us to try to recruit them back into the mix.
Yeah. Sherry, can you describe a little bit for those who don't know you, overview of your business and businesses? And can you talk about how many employees you had before the pandemic, and if you had layoffs, and where you are now as far as numbers?
Yeah, so we have 8 restaurants in Santa Barbara. They're all different in their models. They go from fast casual, very simple, if you will, restaurants, all the way to full service dining and cocktail bars. Prior to the pandemic, we had 350 employees. I would say currently in Santa Barbara, we have about 250 employees. We have had many of our restaurants required to limit operations. We have some that are only open 5 days a week instead of 7 because we don't have the staff to support 2 additional days. We have several restaurants who turn away hundreds of reservations on a weekly basis, with sections of the restaurant being closed because we can't accommodate all of the guests who want to come. I think the demand is returning, and the demand is definitely increasing, and that's very exciting, and we're very optimistic about that. But from our perspective, we're currently not able to meet the full demand. We have one restaurant that still hasn't reopened, directly due to our inability to find staff to be able to run and operate that particular unit. So yeah, it's real.
It is, and it's not just that oh, that's bad for your business growth. It's really, as Josh described, the importance of the hospitality industry and restaurant industry for our quality of life for tourism and residents. This is why this is of such concern, because it affects our overall Alaska economy. If you don't mind sharing, if you would just take one more minute, is there anything unusual you have done to try to face this problem, or anything that you found that worked as far as recruitment or incentives, or what are you seeing with wages in your industry, anything like that?
I think there's a demand, obviously, for higher wages, like there always is, but it's increasingly present in sort of this post-pandemic period in our business that runs on very, very small operating margins. It's challenging because there just isn't room within a budget to be able to increase wages as much as what the demand is requiring right now.
Yeah.
As far as recruitment, we've been trying every single thing we can think of, short of me in a chicken suit waving a sign on the corner. It's just, we have, referral programs where we're offering, cash bonus incentives for people referring employees in. We've recruited in every type of job board and posting that we can think of. We've put flyers, we've created flyers that we've put in places that have, large populations of people, laundromats, churches, schools, grocery stores, trying to get in front of people who might be looking for work. We believe we have a really great employment opportunity with a company that cares about its people and provides really, well-paying and very solid employment opportunities. And it's just, we're not seeing response to those efforts. 2 years ago, we would put an ad out for a server. We might get 15 to 25 responses. Currently now, there are days we get 0 or we get 1 for someone who has, experience, who could be able to step into some of our full service restaurants. So it's very, the response is much, much smaller than anything we've ever seen.
Yeah. Thank you very much for opening up and sharing this. It's a difficult time. We appreciate you. All right, let's go now to an entirely different sector of the economy and introduce Dawn Kinderdick from Vega, North America. Dawn, would you tell us a little bit about your business and share your experience in this challenging time?
Sure. Thank you for having me this morning. So we are a manufacturer of architectural lighting products, mostly exterior, who happen to have their manufacturing in this wonderful, weird area of Santa Barbara County. So we look at things from a completely different scenario, and we have been in operation as a critical infrastructure manufacturer since April 16th of 2020. So we only shut down for 2 weeks, and otherwise we've been operating more or less at full speed. So we have basic assembly operations, warehousing, paint operations, some light machining, and we have electronic SMT assembly here at our factory, as well as a full engineering staff, sales, finance, and all the back offices as well here. So we normally are roughly 160 people here in Carpinteria. So we capture about 60% of our workforce from northern Ventura County and about 40% from what I would call southern Santa Barbara County. So infrastructure for us is very important in a slightly different way than internet access. It's the very basic infrastructure of having the 101 operational and not a parking lot. So that's a big deal for us as we move forward and attract people to the area. I'm gonna absolutely say some of the same things that Josh and Sherry both did. Housing and cost of living continue to impact us heavily. In the last 12 months, we've lost 8 people who've moved out of the area, either to lower cost areas in California like Bakersfield, or simply have moved out of state. So we've had people move as far away as North Carolina, Vegas, South Dakota, just simply because of housing costs and because of the opportunity to work remotely now for many businesses. So that's impacted us in a major way. Average time to fill open positions. We currently have 11 open positions in our manufacturing and a couple more in our offices. Used to be about 20 days to fill, or more than double that now. And to Sherry's point, in some of our warehousing and what I would say lower wage hourly positions, sometimes we can go days without getting a response to those kinds of positions. We see heavy increase in competition. We've seen an increase in the hourly wage for those positions operating under $25 an hour. It's jumped 20 or 30% in the last 6 months. So what used to be a market that was $15 starting wage is now 18 to 20 and continues to climb at this point. Actually in the salaried professional area, we're not seeing the same kind of stress. We're actually still able to hire there in our higher paying positions without the terrible increase in timing. I'll agree 100% on childcare and unemployment benefits that continue. Childcare was a huge issue for us. For some of our employees, it remains an issue. We've gone to a very flexible work schedule for those that we can. So we're working 2 or 3 days from home now to allow people to access or to be able to offset childcare, and have continued to expand that throughout our organization. And Kristen, to your question, we're using signing bonuses, retention bonuses at 30 days, 90 days, referral programs as well. We've compressed our normal time to bring temporary employees onto our benefits as well, to try and entice people to come in, and really trying to market everywhere. We use temp agencies as well as direct marketing for those roles. So it's a very quick overview.
No, that's great. It's very helpful. And I do think, it's helpful for us to know that your industry is impacted it in a slightly different way, but with some of the same challenges. Okay, thank you, Dawn. Let's move now to education. The business and education has been more connected during the pandemic than I think ever before, and our expectations have been so high for them to be able to hire more teachers. I'm happy to have Hilda Maldonado, our Santa Barbara Unified Superintendent, with us today to talk about an area that we also may not think very much about, having hiring challenges. How's it going for you, Hilda?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Kristen, for having me on. And like my colleagues, Josh, Sherry, and Don, I think that many of the things that we experienced in education are similar, but in our case, it's not only for our employees, but also for our students. This issue of childcare and internet access is such a big topic. And housing, I should say, all three. So we have a little more than 1,400 employees in Santa Barbara Unified School District, 19 schools, TK through 12th grade, so 3-4-year-olds all the way to 17, 18-year-old students, about 1,300 students that are served by Santa Barbara Unified. It has created, like everybody else, a unique challenge with respect to recruitment, selection of qualified candidates for positions in support staff, food service workers, maintenance workers, and others, teachers and administrators, principals, assistant principals, directors. So we have a spectrum of jobs that we have, obviously, within our school district. And because, like everybody else has said, our quality of life, amazing community is also a bit isolated from a larger pool of more populated areas where we may have a larger selection of employees to choose from. So pre-pandemic, we had that as a status. Obviously, after the pandemic and now post-pandemic, we continue to have some similar unique opportunities and some challenges with respect to the workforce shortage. We spent 80 to 85% of our budget on people. And so as a large employer, we are a people industry, unlike some of the other industries but we also had to move into technology use, spent a lot of money on purchasing hotspots for our different students throughout our city, because we found that the accessibility of internet in some places, and many of you on this call that live here already know, I know even where I live, I don't have good signal on Verizon, just in the area that I'm at. But if I'm on Cox internet, then it's a lot better. So we had to figure out how to get hotspots to families that are different, in different parts of our city, and had to figure out whether it was Verizon, T-Mobile, or other companies to help us to make sure that our kids had appropriate upload and download speeds for just turning in their papers to their teachers or logging on to Zoom. And then there was an impact if their parents were also working from home. So parents were contacting us to try to figure out what to do about upping their internet speed. So just on internet speed alone, we have a lot to say about that, so I won't belabor it, but that's definitely an area that we see as a huge impact to not only some of the employees that we were able to send off to work remotely, but also for our students. So with spending about 80 to 85% of our budget on people, we found that looking for the qualified people and losing some of our people, it came down to the same issues. Childcare. We ended up spending some of our federal monies that are usually used for after-school childcare for our parents, where it was actually turned around and used for our employees, just to have employees being able to come to work. So we repurposed, and we were allowed to do so, some of the federal funding for childcare. We had to take that back though once we came back to in-person, and that has created some issues for our employees. We have about 65% of our employees are also parents in our school district. So that's an added challenge for us. We are losing two amazing administrators, a couple, a principal and an assistant principal that are having to move because they have young children, and that's an issue for them as well with childcare. When we did return to in-person, we also had to hire more people because we have to put in the safety protocols of social distancing, which lowered the ratio of adults to child. And so in the middle of trying to hire people to do that, we found that many people were receiving larger than normal unemployment benefits. And so that also created a barrier for us in terms of bringing people back. And that has been said by some of my colleagues. Coming out of the pandemic, of course, we have been infused with a lot of money to address the pandemic learning loss. We're expecting close to $36 million. But again, 85% of that's going to go to staffing. So we are challenged again with trying to find the qualified people to do that. Extra services to kids. We have a robust summer school plan and a program that we will have in place. We've infused some money to our nonprofit agencies to help us with some of the summer programming for our kids. So we hope that's going to help some of those industries that usually partner with us. But in this case, we're using some of our funding to help them with their work, and also just creating a partnership with us along with city parks and recreation. So some of the things we're doing to I guess, come up with some solutions, like was said before, signing bonuses. We just negotiated a contract just approved by the board last couple weeks ago. We have settled on a 3-year contract with our teachers that will provide them with an 8% pay raise over the next 3 years, along with improving our health and welfare benefits. I feel pretty proud of that agreement, and I think in the next 3 years, settling that creates some stability with our employees, mostly our teachers. But we hope to attract more teachers to our area, because it is hard to attract quality teachers to our area because of what was said earlier, the housing costs. We're starting to also increase the salary for some new hires. Just like Dawn said, we're looking around our industry partners to see what other people are paying some of our support staff, our maintenance people, paraprofessionals, and others. Having incentives for people who refer employees to our district, who are current employees, was also a way that we were able to hire some more people. Increasing our budget for advertising, like my colleague said, maybe putting ourselves in a suit and trying to let people know we're hiring, but really trying to get better at getting people to come and work for Santa Barbara Unified. A more efficient selection process. And just, with the child care issue, we know that there is a legislation at the state level to provide universal TK, which could potentially add more children in the younger ages to our school district. So that may create some opportunities for working parents. And that's pretty much where we're at. We're still looking to settle with one other additional labor partner. Once we do that, we hope to settle the system in some way for the next 3 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hilda. Such an interesting and challenging time. Thank you for sharing that with us. I'd like to introduce Trish Miller from Spherion Staffing. Trish has also provided data for us consistently over the past decade as having been a member of the board and President's Circle. So we thank you for being here today. And if you would give a little overview, looks like you're ready to do that. Thank you.
So thank you, Kristen. We have been recruiting in Santa Barbara since 2007, and it's always hard to find people here. So, but this recently is just unprecedented. It is just amazing. We changed our logo and our branding back in 2020. So we're all about orange, and we had a tagline, "Let's get to work." So now it's "Let's get back to work." We talk to our clients and our prospects all the time about the labor shortage and what they can do to help find and retain workers. So it's too hard to find them, so don't lose them. So retention is really important these days. So we looked at 5 major issues impacting workforce growth. The first one being, breaking through the noise. So there's just a lot of noise about a lot of reasons about why there's a labor shortage and how to keep good people. But we look at specific examples of how to attract them by incentivizing. So you've all discussed some of them, offering starting and stay bonuses, providing performance incentives, leading the way and offering competitive pay rates. We have a client in carpinteria that recently increased their entry level wages. They were at 18 and they moved to 20 and 21. And that helped, but still, it's hard. Providing free training and development. People want to be able to get ahead in their job and they can't do it without training. Make sure you recognize and reward achievements. And don't forget to promote from within. A lot of people will leave because they just have a dead end job and don't see any way to get ahead. Offering flexible schedules, that was mentioned as well too. A long time ago when I started working, you had to be at work at 8 and had to stay till 5 and went to the lunchroom 12 to 1. And we just don't do business like that anymore. We help people out whether they have to drop kids off at school first or leave early to coach football practice. So flexible hours, flexible start and stop times, consider moving employees to the shift that works best for them. And then eliminating mandatory overtime. So one of the things the labor shortage does is create overtime for your employees. And, not everybody wants to work 12 hours a day. They want to go home and be with their family. Reconsider your requirements. So we have a number of clients that have dropped a number of requirements. So, bachelor's degrees, things that just don't really matter for the job that they're applying for. Some of them don't do drug screens and background checks anymore. Also, looking at job histories, I know in the past people have looked at job hoppers and wouldn't even consider them. Now you have to be able to consider everyone. There's reasons why people leave jobs. You just have to look at people that you normally wouldn't have looked at in the past. Look at your rehire policy. Look at if you have any tenure limits on assignments. Some of our clients do that. After 6 months, they have to go away and then they can't work there for 6 months until they can go back. So you got to get rid of those. Reevaluate your attendance policies and point systems that automatically just fire people. And again, eliminating specific hire requirements that don't have to be done at this time. And then look at your hiring process. Somebody said, but the school district talked about looking how people apply, shorter applications, self-scheduling of interviews, remote interviewing processes. And then this is really important, faster decision-making. When you find someone that's a possible fit for your job, you need to make an offer within a day or two because you're going to lose them. That happens to us all the time. You just have to be faster about making that decision to hire. And then better and more frequent communication with candidates. They like to be told where they are and what's the next step and what they can expect next. That helps a lot. And then highlighting a safe workplace. So there are concerns about people returning to work. So you need to make sure they understand your availability of personal protective equipment, whether you do temperature checks, how your offices are set up, how your business is set up. Consider offering free masks, COVID tests, flu and COVID vaccines. That's all very helpful. And then remote work options. So more and more employees, candidates, when they call us, will tell, they really love remote jobs. If we post a remote job opening, we get lots of applications. I had recently had a bookkeeping candidate tell me, hey, I'm only going to consider remote. So working on that. We all talked about childcare and elder concerns are certainly a concern across the country. Things to consider: sponsor or partner with other employers to provide on-site or near-site space, hire homework helpers, consider, again, part-time or full-time job sharing, and allowing for flexible work schedules. Also, you need to build a better workplace. So, you want a place to work where people will look forward to going to work every day. So we suggest surveying your employees to see what is most important to them and get feedback and make improvements based on their feedback. Provide paid time off for community give back activities and look for opportunities to add fun. You don't want to lose your employees. Make it a fun place to work. Impulse in Goleta does a food truck every few months, and they open it up to the community so you can all just gather and meet people. And I know that's been a little different since the pandemic, but it was a really great thing to do for the employees. So again, you want to foster a positive team culture, build an atmosphere based on respect, trust, and transparencies. We've had conversations with clients about supervision, first line supervision, how important it is for our employees when they show up to feel that they're wanted and welcomed at the workforce. Encourage employee suggestions, and then show employees how their own work contributes to the overall company performance. And again, recognizing and rewarding. Lastly, about promoting your reputation. So I do some in-kind work for Make-A-Wish Tri-Counties, and whenever I need to find a person for them, I have no problem finding applicants because, everybody wants to work for Make-A-Wish. So you want everyone to feel the same way about your company. So look at your online brand and your reputation in order to attract candidates, whether it's Google, Glassdoor, or Facebook, or Yelp. It's really important to have good employee reviews and actively monitor and respond to them. And then encourage your workforce to do reviews for you. That's usually one of the most helpful things to increase your reputation. And let's get to work.
Wow, that was great. I suggest maybe like that. I guess this is stuff we're supposed to know, but I haven't heard it in a while. That was really helpful. And somebody said in the chat, can we have the slides? So I think other people might appreciate having that as well.
Sure.
I also wonder if some of us of a certain age, it was not like this for us. And so it's probably good for you to remind us we have to be different. A lot of us came from, like you described, 8 to 5, that's it.
Yeah. There was nothing, anything like that. It's just so much better. And you just need to attract people.
Yeah, and let's just do it. It'll work out in the end. Okay. Sitting on my agenda. Thank you so much, Trish. I'd like to introduce Angel Siglaris, Plan Member Financial. Please tell us about your business and your experience with this. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you. Good morning. First of all, just listening to it, it's definitely we're not on an island by ourselves. That's for sure. Yeah. We're a financial services company, and we have about 185 employees. So being in the financial services industry, I would say we probably have, we're definitely a people business. We have probably 30%, 35% are on the lower side, probably non-exempt hourly workers, and then we have a lot of salaried workers. One of the things that's been extremely interesting is that We have never shut down. So being an essential sector, we've been open the entire time. We went to a skeleton crew. We had about 40 to 45 people in the office, and then the rest of our staff remote. We also have an office in Irvington, and we have about 20% of our workforce that were remote pre-pandemic. We actually found when we first went remote, one of the things that was interesting was that talent acquisition really changed, just really changed. I mean, from the perspective of, we recruited all the colleges locally, so UCSB, Cal Poly, Westmont, Channel Islands, Cal Lutheran, and we really jumped on the virtual career fairs and really took advantage of our relationships and partnerships with the colleges. And so that really helped us start to build some better partnerships. What was interesting was we actually had a completely different group of people that we were interviewing, and we weren't sure, obviously, how long the remote was going to last. So people were very interested, very intrigued. At the beginning, we hired a few people. Again, we probably add about 10% to our staff each year. In the beginning, we found that it was actually fairly easy to recruit. The question became whether or not the jobs were going to remain remote, or whether somebody who took a job that they knew it was going to come in office, and then it was remote to start, then they got comfortable, and then they changed their mind, or circumstances changed. So it's kind of that ebb and flow was a little bit problematic. We have not furloughed anybody. We have not laid anybody off. We have not taken away any benefits, which we are very proud of. But as we're going back to work, obviously we are encountering many of the challenges that are being spoken of, from the perspective that many people have gotten very comfortable working remote and do not want to come back to the office. Fortunately or unfortunately, we are an office-centric company. We want our employees back in the office. So we may be going against the grain. But on the other hand, we think from the collaboration, from the networking, from the promotions perspective, we really do want people back in the office. So we are actually in the middle of our return to office transition. We've kind of set a tiered approach of bringing people back. So from our initial date is June 21st. Those that come back on June 21st have an opportunity to gain a bonus at that particular point that they can use for whatever they want. And then the next tier is July 30th. And then our target of having everybody back that was in office prior to the pandemic would be August the 20th. Certainly, I think we've lost 8 people as well over the course of the last 15 months. And as far as time to fill positions, what was taking maybe 30 days is now taking 60 to 70 days. I think one of the groups that's most interesting is IT, because IT for most companies could be remote prior to the pandemic. And so that kind of set us apart because we were able to do the remote. Today, IT is remote almost everywhere. And so it's no longer, now it's about compensation. We had some of the wandering workforce along the way as well, where they moved away in the middle of the pandemic, thinking that it would be temporary, and they've chosen to make it permanent. So we did telecommunications agreements when we went out, so that we had the ability to either say that position, when they came back, when we were coming back, could we allow them to do remote or not? And most of them are choosing to stay where they are and not return. So we're having a little bit of that. I think when you look at compensation, as an example, we had one person who was in IT, where in our work here, he was probably in the 50th percentile from a compensation on a national level. He moved to Arkansas and very quickly went up to about the 95th percentile using the same salary. So we're not 100% sure at this particular point if we are going to adjust compensation for location or any of those factors yet. We are considering it. We've actually looked at all of our jobs again, and we're rerunning our compensation models to see where they fall on the bell curve. I think one of the things that Trish said, I think is just really crazy, is that employees that are that are applying for positions, the communication, they want you to stay in touch with them hourly. They want to know what's going on, or they ghost you. They just disappear. They don't care. There's no loyalty anywhere at this particular point. They want to see what the value is. So those same employees go out to Glassdoor and Google. Reviews have never been more important. And all it takes is a disgruntled employee, and they go out and they just start blasting you for whatever it is, your compensation, for the communication. So not getting defensive and just continuing to stay the path and keep your mission and your values there is really important. We had implemented Skillsoft and Percipio before we went through the pandemic. And one of the things that we did, I mean, we have probably 10,000, 14,000 courses, vignettes, books that our employees can use. So we've really focused on that continuous learning and the skill gaps and upskilling, so that somebody who wanted to learn a skill that they maybe didn't have, something that they were interested in, that they could do that at their leisure. It's definitely increased, but one of the things that we're finding right now is retention. So it's not necessarily the recruiting piece of it. It's looking at how are we going to keep the employees that we have today? Do we want to keep all of those employees? Because I also will share that having, 2/3 of our employees remote, we probably had more people on performance improvement plans than we thought we ever would, because people weren't as productive as what we thought. It's amazing from a business continuity perspective. The whole 1-year experiment of going remote certainly proved that a financial services company, and many, which is not like a technology firm, that we could do it. We were prepared. The Thomas Fire and the Montecito mudslide certainly put us in that perspective, but it's been extremely challenging. It's hard to find people. I think, as everyone said, the cost of living and salaries are not commensurate. So Santa Barbara is not as attractive to those that are not in professional salaried positions. They don't see, one of the biggest group that we had that kind of changed were the college students. And part of it was probably parents, because what would happen is you have a college graduate that's in a job, living in an apartment, can't go anywhere, do anything, going to work, and their parents are help them find their first jobs. And it was like, well, why don't you just come home? Just come home. You can live at home, find a job closer to home. So there's been a lot of transient people in that situation. I think one of the other things, there's definitely, I don't want to diminish this at all, but there certainly is a fear about coming back to work for some people. I personally am immune compromised, and I've been at the office the entire time. There's a thought process of the other people coming back and what does that mean? But then there's also people, and we're all dealing with this from an HR perspective, there's also people who are taking advantage of that. We actually had one person that had their doctor and obviously, I'm not going to say any names, but this person actually had their doctor declare them as agoraphobic, and it was situational locations to work. So this person was afraid to come to work, but yet this person was out in public doing many things without a mask on. So just so many things that you're trying to grapple with. But I think as far as, diversity, certainly the remote possibility and being able to recruit, there's a lot more talent that we can seek, but our challenge is going to be the fact that we do want people on site. And so as we're going through this, we're trying to be more flexible with hours, maybe even looking at a 4-day work week, or an every other half a day on Friday off. We're not there yet. We're just trying to look at how we might do that, but we would not do that until people came back and we settled back into our pre-pandemic kind of staff, and then maybe look at something post Labor Day. Some of our positions also, as I said, depending on the type of positions, some of the candidates really, they'll be very honest and say, you know, that they think they're just going to stay on unemployment a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. I mean, the honesty is great, but on the other hand, it's very sad.
Thank you. Oh gosh, thank you, Angel. You really touched on so many of the issues that are related to this. It's recruitment, but it's also, like you said, it's retention. It's having gone remote. How much can we stay remote? Coming back to the office. You really touched on a lot of issues that I think are related to this. Thank you to all of the speakers. I hope you all scheduled. We did say 90 minutes for this because we wanted to have a chance for some discussion here at the end. So I hope you can stay with us for that. And I'm going to look to see if raised hands, do you know how to do that in Zoom now? Everybody's like super Zoom efficient. I will look for that. And while I give you a chance to think if you have a question or if you want to make a comment, let me first go back to the speakers. Now that you've heard the other speakers, is there anything you would like to add or start us off with? I've never seen you be so shy.
Hey, Kristen.
Someone mentioned about cybersecurity. I think that's something that's going to become a very big industry because people are working remote. And I think there are going to be a lot more opportunities that revolve around that.
Yes, and thank you for mentioning that. I do think there has been so much in the news about this lately, and so much question about where it is in the list of priorities. But I do think as of today, we are planning a webinar like this on cybersecurity. I have very little details yet, but this sort of came up at the end of the last week as a hot topic. So thank you for mentioning that. Also, then maybe before I go to Ray McDonald, I'll also mention that the chamber, you probably all know the chamber, we did start an online job portal to try to help with this. You know, are there seekers out there, job seekers out there who we don't know about? Probably not, but we did offer it's live. We have on our website, members can post their jobs, and then we, the chamber, are heavily promoting the site with that, kind of like Trish's thing, with that chamber brand of these are good chamber member jobs that are available in our local community, in hopes of trying to help you guys out. I think this came from the hospitality industry asking, could we please have an alternative way to post some of our jobs? So that is going on. Oh yeah, somebody put it in the chat for me. Ray McDonald, would you like to say a couple things?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kristen. Again, first of all, I just want to compliment you on putting this event together. This is exactly the type of thing, and I think the timing is absolutely perfect as we're coming out of, fingers crossed, as we're coming out of the health crisis. And I know that in the middle of the month, which is actually next week, the governor is going to be declaring that we go back to a lot more indoor work and et cetera, more opening up of the economy. With that said, I did want to make a couple of comments. Number one, doing Josh's presentation, and Josh, another great presentation. Josh has been a mainstay with the Workforce Development Board for a number of years, doing research for us in the county. And the comment came up right after his presentation as to whether or not there was going to be follow-up and that sort of thing. And I know Josh had a number of questions at the end of his presentation. Just to be clear about that, yes, there will be follow-up in regards to additional research on some of those areas that Josh touched upon. The idea behind the research that he presented today was to kind of get a snapshot in time of how we were impacted by the pandemic that started in March of 2020 and it's still ongoing. And we kind of did a rough cutoff of early this year. Certainly December 31st of last year was the original cutoff date, but I think we actually wound up going a little bit further, getting a sense of what the impacts were on our economy. Now what we're looking to do in regards to helping recovery is to see what strategies we as the public-private partnership or the Workforce Development Board need to be doing to help the folks get back to work and help individual industry sectors get back to their normal production and their normal activities. And so that's going to be what we'll be looking at over the next coming months. So you should be hearing more about that and some of those results, and certainly as those become more of a flow process of real-time information, we'll be certainly willing to share that with the chamber and the chamber's members, maybe on some of your future webinars, however the timing works out for those particular things. So I did want to mention that. Also, we as a workforce board in Santa Barbara County also partner very, very closely with our neighboring workforce board in SLO County. In fact, we're part of what's called the Regional Planning Unit. And so we're doing some things together so that there will be sort of a larger picture that we're also going to be focusing on with some of our research. It may not be important for some of the folks who are on this particular webinar because you're looking to get people back to work immediately, but we're looking at some longer range strategies as well as some of our future industry sectors that are going to be growth, that sort of thing. So I just wanted to put in a plug for that, but also wanted to finish by pointing out what Alma has already put on the chat, which is that in about 30 days, we're going to be having a back to work event that would be for individuals who are now feeling more comfortable because the vaccinations have actually been more widespread. And so those individuals who are now connected to the unemployment system that we are connected to also will know that this event is there. So if you're an employer, you want to hire folks, again, keep us in mind. We'll be sharing that information with the chamber, and there may be a couple of little perks in there for you as an employer if you hire someone from us. So those would be new hires, that sort of thing. So I just want to kind of touch upon those things. Again, thank you very much, Kristen, for putting this on. It's exactly what we need here in South County. We need in North County and Mid County. I'm a county-wide organization. So you're the one that's done it for us. So I wanted to definitely participate and thank you for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. And thank you, Alma, who's participated in so many of these roundtables to keep us connected with the Workforce Board. There's a question in the chat box about, let me phrase this, let me start a little bit differently. I think it's so interesting which of these industries can utilize remote work and which can't. And I know that changed slightly in some businesses who thought, well, we could never do this, all of a sudden can. I'm thinking of banking. I'm thinking of, well, probably Angel, your financial services. But there's others like Don's, when you're building beautiful light fixtures, you kind of have to be there. And with Hilda at school, you got to be in the building. So I don't know, I'm fascinated by how much this is going to, how much change there and disruption there's going to be in the workforce because of this as an added benefit. But one of the questions was, I have heard anecdotally that most people found moving to remote, there was still an adequate amount of work product from those remote workers. But did some of you experience the opposite? And would anybody like to speak to that? Where you let them work remote and it's just kind of like they disappeared.
Did you say, Kristen, this is Hilda. I do want to say that we do have some jobs that can be done remotely.
Okay.
In the fiscal services, because we do have a business side to the district, to that part. I don't know that they disappeared. Our payroll folks, our accountants, those kinds of employees actually prefer to stay, but I would love to be able to measure whether or not the productivity went up or down, like my colleague said. I can't say that it went down. We would have heard about it because it's people's paychecks, but there's a few jobs that we know can be done remotely. Even our IT folks can work remotely. And because of the social distancing, we may end up having to keep some of those jobs as remote jobs.
Right.
And I think I mentioned about productivity and what's interesting. So we have a call center, and the call center is measured on every call, the length of call, how many calls they take a day. So initially it was kind of thought that in the financial services that we really didn't want that to be a remote situation. However, it was very easy to measure when we went remote that particular department was doing exactly what they did when they were in the office. So that was wonderful.
Oh, wow.
However, there are many other departments where there aren't measurements to show that people are actually more productive or not. Were they getting their jobs done? Yes. Were there more errors? Yes. And what does that mean? The other thing that I think is really interesting is we use an engagement platform called Tiny Pulse that's a survey. And so the cadence is every 2 weeks. And what's interesting about surveying your employees is employees aren't obviously very diplomatic sometimes in what they say and how they say it, and then how to transition that into, verbiage that you can talk to your executive team about and not have it become just this free-for-all type thing. When employees say that they feel that they're more productive, so at least in our situation, our employees said they feel more productive, they think they're more productive, they, see benefits in it. I don't think that we would disagree that it's much more convenient to be at home, that they can, get out of bed and be on their job sooner, that, that they can be off work and be with their family. So from a convenience and from a work-life balance and flexibility and being able to maybe take a walk in the afternoon, I think those are truly phenomenal benefits that our employees gained over the course of the last 15 years or 15 months. Feels like 15 years as an HR professional. But I would say from actually measuring productivity, I've not talked to any colleague that really has a lot of true measurements that it was better or worse.
I see. Okay. That's extremely helpful. And I love the example you gave. The Chamber of Commerce, we've been remote. We used to call it virtual for many, many years. And we used to tout the benefits of it. And people were like, but I never had a problem. We never had a problem with productivity, but you have to have, great staff and great mission and great brand. And, we were set up for that, which you would think would turn us then when everyone had to go remote. You would have thought it would have been easier for us. And I'm sure it was a little bit easier, but it wasn't easy. Because even though we were virtual, we were out there at your business, at an event, at a restaurant, at a hotel, so much that then coming home and sitting in front of Zoom was not comfortable.
And I think I can't remember who mentioned it, but also as far as bandwidth, just the internet and the ability, if you were servicing clients, because we too are a people company.
Yeah.
And so our clients and the bandwidth, computer equipment, just trying to, deploy that at a number of equipment. We switched from using a virtual network to Amazon workstations the day before. So all of those types of things. There were a lot of challenges. So as a company, I think we did a phenomenal job transitioning and staying with it and keeping everyone employed. But what's challenging right now is not only is the talent hard to get, but how we move into the next phase and what that really means is really open for discussion.
Yeah. You did do a great job. I say to all of you, you did a great job transitioning.
There are some questions in the chat box. I know
okay.
They're directed at specific people, but.
Okay.
I think Diana's asking some of the employers on the call would employers benefit from a training to supervise remote work? Is that something that's needed?
Oh, that would be interesting. And it sounds like we need a training on how to measure it. Anybody say they want training on that? And then the next question, what are some reasons that applicants are not getting hired? Is it lack of skills, experience, or availability? I think it's all of that, right? But does anybody want to speak to that? I see Sherry nodding.
Yeah, it's all of the above.
Yeah. And Sherry, I know you said you have openings in all levels, but do you really mean from busboy to marketing? I mean,
Yes, every level, from entry level, front of house, all the way through management.
wow. Maybe I'll move us into a little bit. We had said we would try to talk a little bit about timing, and I hear, again, anecdotally through these meetings and talking to a lot of you, some people think there's a light at the end of tunnel in around September, and then maybe September through December. And so I want to test this. The Chamber's been working on the theory that there are sort of 5 reasons that have caused the local labor shortage. And one of those is childcare and uncertainty around what is the fall going to look like for my child's either education or extracurricular activities, or what anything related to childcare, or if I have young children, what that's looking like. We've certainly talked about the fact that, you know, federal relief and unemployment benefits are a piece of it. Health and the fear around health. So particularly for people who have an underlying condition, there's an extra barrier for them wanting to come back into a crowded space. College students, having the college campuses shut down without that amount of students who are often looking for part-time hospitality jobs. We're hoping that they come back in the fall. And then the category, I sort of say trauma or moved or just change, meaning Sherry mentioned people it's a little heartbreaking to have put your life and soul into an industry that gets so beaten down. Or was it Angel's example, somebody's example of moving back home to the parents, and then just change. I'm sure there are families who think, well, now let's just keep one person working and one person at home. Can I ask the group, do you agree that, is that the 5 things? Have I missed anything? And do we feel like September through December is the light at the end of the tunnel for those 5 things? Particularly because of school coming back, herd immunity, and the federal relief expiration.
I think one of the things that's going to be very interesting is how employers treat employees that come back that maybe have a cold.
Oh.
You know, that have sneezes or a cough, or, you know, will you send them home? Will you pay them? Are they, you know, because we aren't completely out of this situation, will you have a flu clinic? Will you encourage it? Are you doing a mandatory vaccination policy or voluntary? So I think even though, you know, we're kind of getting back into a little bit of the normal, what's amazing, I think the Labor Day holiday is kind of like what we're hearing is, for at least from the financial services industry, a lot of the companies are going back between now and Labor Day, but then we're going into the holidays. And then you get the holidays and you get people wanting to go home or travel or be away, or flu or illness, and you know what's going to happen. If we can make it through that, then I think there's another mountain that we've climbed.
Yes, thank you. Hilda, did you raise your hand?
I did. I'm used to school life, everyone.
That's okay. I like it.
I was just going to mention the other thing is housing cost is something that, you know, is a big issue that I've encountered personally, and I hear from many of my teachers who are in the higher pay scale of our organization. Just in case any of you have kids, we are going to do in-person in the fall. We are going to provide some options for people that are needing to have that distance learning, but in our initial survey, we didn't get many parents asking for distance learning program to continue, but we will be putting something in place. We've also got a pretty clear message from state and federal that we are pushing for in-person schooling as our main, program for the year. Thank you, Kristen. And I may need to jump off in a few minutes just so you're aware. Thank you.
That's okay. I think we're going to wrap it up unless there are any last comments, questions, concerns. Okay, then I thank you all very much for participating. This can be a kind of a touchy subject. We all care a lot about our employees and we care a lot about our community, and it's hard to complain, but sometimes I don't feel like we've been complaining today. I feel like we've been talking about some real and true challenges, and I think we've been given some options for how to address that. So we appreciate your dialogue and your participation in this, and please keep in touch. I will see you on the South Coast.